Okay, so I guess everyone, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Depending where you're actually joining us from, it'd be either, I guess, just mid-morning or the afternoon for us here in Paris. But I just wanted to thank you for your time, for joining us. My name is Melissa Chung, and I'm the chapter lead for SoGal Foundation Toronto, and now Paris as well. And SoGal is Foundation is part of SoGal Venture. And so we're excited here to be hosting two very special guests, and Sophie from Business France and Christy Weary from the CVCA. But before we begin, I just want to share with you the mission of SoGal. For those that are not familiar, SoGal is the largest global platform for diverse entrepreneurs and investors. And we provide resources, education to a community of 100,000 plus people in our network. And with 37 chapters worldwide, we are built by inspiring, fearless group of visionaries, executors, as well as we've been featured in Forbes, Inc., Fortune, and the Wall Street Journal, and much more. The SoGal's mission is to close the diversity gap in entrepreneurship. SoGal is a champion for diversity and inclusion and aims to serve members of all backgrounds, particularly those underrepresented in entrepreneurship, and all genders are welcomed. And so for anyone who's interested to learn more about SoGal Venture, you can email us at toronto@imsogal.com. Emily can probably put that in the chat for everyone. And if you can share your contact details with us, and we'll be sure to get back to you. Today we are starting. It's a presentation. We're doing a fireside chat with Business France and the CVCA. And just so you know, it's actually the Canadian Venture and Private Equity Association. I'll let Christy talk about her organization more. And this event is sponsored by my company, Crippit. And for those that don't know about Crippit, we actually 3D print out high heel protectors to help women with if they're walking on any uneven surfaces or grass that they might be caught in. So anyways, we've invented that product that you can look more, you can find out more on our website at www.crippit.com, KRIPPIT. And again, as you guys probably know, this event will be recorded, and a link will be made available for afterwards for those that weren't able to join us. And we've asked actually kindly that during the guest presentations that perhaps keeping your camera off will just save some bandwidth. At the end, we encourage everyone to come back on with their cameras, and towards the end we'll unmute. We can interact with our guest speakers. So without further ado, actually, I am going to, I think I already made, and Sophie, you're already a co-host, right? So actually, yes, and sorry, Christy's joined us there. So I'm going to let Sophie introduce herself, and she's from Business France, and some of the missions of her organization.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for the opportunity. Hello, everyone. So yes, I work for Business France. It's a governmental agency. We help French companies to export globally. So we help them grow globally. We have offices in over 60 countries around the world. So that's just one of our mandate to help French companies do business on the world stage. And also we do help foreign companies to expand their operation or set up a shop or set up an office in France. Again, like when I say companies, it could be a wide variety of companies, from large groups to even startups and even entrepreneurs. So I know that maybe part of the group today, you may be an entrepreneur or maybe part of a startup, and we do Business France help this type of companies coming into France, bring value to the country and create jobs. So that's our main goal at Business France. And also I have a large experience around going global, because I assisted a French company, mainly from the life science field, to do business in Canada. So in life sciences, you have pharmaceuticals, medical devices, digital health. So it could be on this sector, you may have challenges around regulation depending on the country you want to enter. And right now I'm in the Invest department at Business France. So I forgot to mention I'm based in Toronto in Canada, but I also help American companies to expand to France. And so I've been working in the Invest department for now 6 years, and again helping a wide variety of companies coming to France, and we provide services to better understand the business environment in France, and hopefully help those companies set up in France. And my background, I forgot to mention, is I have a master's in competitive intelligence and also business from France. It was all around better understanding, the most useful information for the company to make an informative decision. So it was some kind natural for me to continue the path and specializing in foreign investment, international trade, and that's what I enjoy doing. And happy again to be here today to share my experience and tell you a bit more about our agency as well.
Thank you so much, Anne-Sophie, for sharing the introduction. And the reason why I was saying I was inviting Business France, I think that, from a Canadian standpoint, I was just saying that, I myself right now, I'm actually going through the trade program offered through the Toronto Board of Trades. And, we forget that sometimes, although Canada is so big, that population wise, we're so tiny. And, a lot of the Canadian manufacturers, rely heavily on international partnerships, to export their parts or just, deliver, goods and or tech companies, I was going to say, to do, product market test it beyond our local, demographics. So, thank you so much for joining us today. And, as we, discover more about Business France's tools. And I'm just going to ask that our next guest speaker, Christy Weary, from the CVCA, tell us a bit more about her organization, what she does. And I thought, the reason why I invited her as well is because not only does she have great reports about the Canadian venture and private equity market, but it's actually, even though Canada's small, we are, one of the, I think, diversification is really important. So her organization provides a lot of research and tools, and I'll let her introduce herself and talk a bit more about the CVCA.
Thank you, Mel. Thanks, Melissa. Great to meet everybody. I'm Christiane Wary, but please call me Christy. It's easier to say, especially for Anglophones. So it's really a pleasure to be here and great to meet everyone. I'm really looking forward to connecting with everyone and getting to know you better. Again, as Melissa said, I work for the CVCA. We're the Canadian Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. And what we do is we're the voice for private capital in Canada. So we represent private equity and venture capital investors, so GPs, across the coast to coast. What that means is that we provide market intelligence, research, network, as well as policy advocacy with the Canadian federal government and the provincial and municipal government at all levels. So we're essentially a lobby group, but also a think tank. And I lead the research department, where we publish regular reports annually, quarterly, as well as through several research that we commission ad hoc. So again, look out for my market intelligence on Canadian venture capital, as well as a series of D&I reports. So I'm also the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at the CVCA, where I champion and spearhead a number of projects, initiatives that essentially with the goal to create more diversity within the venture capital ecosystem, which I'm more than happy to delve in and discuss further. Just a bit about myself. Prior to joining the CVCA, just under a year ago, I actually came from the venture side. Even further back, I have a master's degree in economics from the London School of Economics, and that was actually from the previous recession in 2008. And since then, I had a really kind of a mixed career in finance, in policy, After a stint in management consulting, I joined a venture debt fund where I helped build it from inception to exit. And then I joined a portfolio company where I helped raise just about 30 million against 100 million valuation from global VCs before joining the CVCA as an industry trade association. So that's a bit about myself. I would love to learn from my co-panelists and love to learn from you guys today. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So I guess just jumping back to Business France now, a couple of very general questions, and then we'll start opening it up to the, for other questions from the from our audience. I guess one of the questions, a lot of you are asking, because Business France, I know recently just revamped their website. They have a lot of great tools on there. And Sophie, can you share with us the vision for the next, 3 to 5 years of like Business France and their goals and their plans for either, helping businesses throughout
Yes.
Canada?
No, happy to answer this question. Well, at Business France, we're really, as I mentioned, we work for either French businesses or foreign companies, American companies, especially like, American, Canadian company, North American companies. So we really want to deliver more targeted services. So yes, the website, we always have to do better in terms of branding. So even for a government agency, it's important to better market yourself and also, of course, deliver on the services that you want to provide to those companies. So either for French companies looking at entering the North American market, my colleagues from the international trade team, they are developing some, we call them acceleration program, to help them connect with the local ecosystem, either New York, Toronto, Chicago, and very sector-focused programs. So they will be developed. I mean, they have developed programs on specific sector, let's say like mobility and transportation. And usually it takes place around Chicago, Detroit, because of the obvious reason, and around healthcare as well. You have those digital health accelerator called Healthcare Next, and they are developing those programs. I've been developing those programs really to help the French company understand, the challenges on the sector. So earlier I mentioned regulation, but also the needs of potential clients for the French companies. So it's all about facilitating, connection, better understanding, again, the business environment and maybe the competition as well that those French companies may face when they want to enter the North American market. And on the other side, so on the investment side, when I mentioned we help foreign companies to expand into France, we develop some programs also in collaboration with the regions. In the States you have different states. In Canada you have the different provinces. So we work closely with our regional partners to again develop some sector-focused programs, or maybe on some specific issue, I would say, topic that it's important and critical for foreign companies to have a clear understanding of what it implies, or involved to set up an office in France. So, for example, in the fall, we'll be working with law firms, developing a program around employment law in France. Usually, it's one of the the questions that the foreign companies are interested in to better understand the job market in France. But also, when I mentioned that we also help the regional agency to better market themselves. So that's another thing that we are developing. So it will be webinars to present the opportunities and specific sector in France. For example, last year I organized a webinar around logistics in northern France. So again, to lay out the opportunities in the region and again, it's all about engaging, like, I'm sure even you at Cripit, Melissa, it's all about engaging with your community of clients or support, of your support network, so that you can help your clients, make a more informative decision and also make connections. So that's in terms of where we're trying to go at Business France. It's yes, more sector focused and also more customer oriented. So
I
we
love
worked,
that part. Yeah.
yeah. So we try to work, like, as I mentioned, like, around specific initiative like this one. But of course, it will be a dialogue with each companies or each startups, entrepreneurs or big groups, to, we develop a specific, obviously, relationship and in order to better serve the needs and answer the needs of the company, of each companies. So
I was just
what I
going to
can
chime
say.
in and just saying it's, what Anne-Sophie is saying, so important. They have, a lot of us, I guess, as busy entrepreneurs, we forget that like all these great resources are there, but it really is about reaching out and finding out, I guess, your local, for Toronto's Anne-Sophie, or, who are the local contacts, so that you can introduce yourself and start fostering those relationships. As you mentioned, it's very much a one-on-one relationship building over time. It's not going to be, I was going to say, working with Anne-Sophie, I mean, there's so many times we might not have the answer, but she'll come back to me, and it's an ongoing progress. So, I don't know if you want to speak more about some of like the programs through like the French Tech or anything of that for any of
Yes,
the
yes. Yeah, with pleasure. Like, I forgot. Like, I know. I don't know. It's hard to see what the audience is coming from. But anyway, even in North America, if you're based in North America, you can connect with French entrepreneurs. Like, so as I mentioned, Business France agency, we do have offices. Toronto, Montreal, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Houston. So we're pretty much, in the major, I would say, cities in North America. So definitely you can feel free to reach out to us. There is also a big French tech community outside of France and in North America through French Tech City program. It started obviously in France. It was a part of an initiative supported by the government trying to build this tech ecosystem in France with, a French touch, not copying the Silicon Valley, but with a French touch in each city. But really, it was to bring together the innovators, in each main cities in France. And the program grew and it expanded globally. So now you have French tech communities in major cities. You have one, Toronto, Montreal. The last one, I think, that the branch that opened was Chicago, I think earlier this year. So still expanding. And I think it's a good way, to meet with entrepreneurs who have succeeded already on the global scale or are going global, and can give you also some advice around France, but even, maybe doing business in North America. So, it's free to connect. Business France agency, also the services provided to foreign entrepreneurs or startups, companies, it's totally free as well. But yeah, definitely, even in your own community, you can find a French tech, I would say, community, and again, find resources at your local level to grow globally.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm actually, a little biased. I'm part of that right now. So I use, so, it is a great, I would say, program, especially to enter into a new market as a startup. You're limited on your resources to begin with. And, how do you navigate, the I'm going to say, between immigration visas to actually, meeting people. And actually, I know Denny's on the call with us today. She's actually at Station F, which is, I guess in France they refer to it as
it's the
Macron's
biggest
dream.
incubator.
Yes, or
in France.
Macron, he says, is it the Silicon Valley for France? that's
Yeah.
his vision, and it is a remarkable place. I mean, the restaurants and everything just started opening up there, and I was even like, oh, I've never even seen that section, and it's really if anyone ever gets to come to Paris right now, it's a really great place to visit. The incubators of LVMH are there along with me, I
They
guess,
have
too.
their own, yes, corporate
Yes,
programs for startups. Yes, definitely.
L'Oreal,
No,
all
that's
the
for sure. It's been a catalyst of, startups from France, but all over the world, this Station F. But as I mentioned too, you have opportunities outside of Paris for maybe some other, startups from different sectors. So I would say that don't forget, to look at even outside of Paris, you can find a great incubator. I know Chrissy will be talking about, investment and tech investment, and from private equity firms or VC firms. But yeah, like it is, funding is critical. Obviously, Paris is a big hub, to finance startups and fund new companies. But even part of this French tech movement in France, you have also the VC community in France that is growing and funding more startups, and not necessarily startups based out of Paris, but also startups, based, in a region, in a more local community in France. Yeah, and even the support network I mentioned, the local economic development partners, they do have also their own programs sometimes to help those, I would say, young and innovative companies to enter the French market and grow in France. Sometimes they have criteria, to be eligible to those programs, but most of the time they work with local, either VCs or local angels, I would say. So there is, I think, more and more also in the field of international trade, in the field of foreign direct investment attraction. It's a big word, but basically it's working to attract foreign investment in a country. The link to to the VCs and the investment funds is getting more and more important. So I'm looking forward to listening to Chrissy later.
I think a lot of them are actually pairing, like co-investing together. Maybe they take turns being leads. Actually, we'll let Christy talk more about that before we get into investments. So no, thank you so much, Anne-Sophie, for sharing those resources and programs. Again, it's about getting started, and I think a lot of us, it's overwhelming, and sometimes everyone groups together, like government is one big entity, but there's also associations and organizations that are not necessarily, they've been funded specifically to help, to bridge those gaps.
I think the first advice would be, my first advice would be, look into your local community and even meet with those companies who've been successful, outside of Canada or outside of the US. And, I think they will provide great wealth of information. And again, like Business France, we're in most of the major cities in North America, and we can be, of course, your point of contact to assess the potential in France for your company.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I was going to suggest maybe if you want to share maybe the general email for Business France, or
people can contact me through LinkedIn, but I'm happy to provide my email as well.
Or general, like I guess I don't know if there's regional. Thank you. Okay, and I guess we're going to jump over to our next presenter now, and then we'll open up the floor for everyone to speak. But Christy, I know you had a presentation for us.
Yes, I'm happy to walk through some numbers. Working with investors, I think I've been trained to be very quantitative and definitely very visual in terms of my display of data. So I'd love to share a couple of slides to give everybody an overview of the Canadian venture capital landscape, if you allow me. I have it on my screen if you'd like me to share.
Hold on, Emily?
Yep, you should be able to share.
Yeah, we made you
perfect. Thank you very much.
I am sharing right now. Okay, so I'm going to be jumping back and forth from a few slides because there's some updated information as of now that's come up from my desk. So I'll flip through both this slide, which I prepared for everybody, and some of the newest information that's come across my desk. Like I said, we are a full-time research team, so things do change. But yeah, so what I'll do is I'll provide a brief overview of what the Canadian venture capital landscape looks like. Feel free to ask me any questions either in the chat or save it in the end for in person. But for those of you who don't live in Canada, this is what sort of the map of Canada looks like. And as you can see, it kind of resembles the population map of Canada as well. You know, in 2020, which was a pandemic year, there was 4.4 billion invested Canadian. That's about that's Canadian. So in USD, it's about 5.3 billion USD, coast to coast, and majority of which, unsurprisingly, is in Ontario and in the Golden Horseshoe region where I sit in Toronto. Also, the second large sort of cluster, super cluster, would be in Quebec, in the Montreal area, and that's particularly interesting for Anne-Sophie because it is everyone is francophone, and there's a lot of relationships between Quebecois investors with French investors across the pond. So yes, there's definitely a lot of global activities happening, and a lot of them are in Quebec if they're with friends. The third hot spot would be in British Columbia, all the way on the West Coast. That's also an area that's really, they do a lot of good tech investments, but also in private equity. So some of the traditional companies, some of the natural resource companies out of Alberta as well. Alberta is also a growing cluster in Canada as well, given the shift from traditional oil and gas into clean tech, some of the transition towards a greener economy that's happening in Alberta. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what the Canadian landscape looks like. And I can talk a little bit more about sort of investment activity. Now, quarter over quarter, Canadian investment activity is in the venture capital has been fairly steady, but with a general upward trajectory. So as you can see in 2020, like I said, even during a pandemic year, you know, of course, the second quarter of 2020, it was pretty much unscathed in terms of the level of investment activity and deal size, deal flow, deal count. None of that has been impacted. So up until Q3 and Q4, you'll see that there has been some impacted activity. But if I could just switch and flip back to my latest document, that will show you that in the latest quarter, let me see if I can pull that up. In the latest quarter, which is right here. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm having a slight technical challenges. Please bear with me for a quick second. Let's see, where is my latest numbers? They're right here. Okay, so hopefully that doesn't shock anybody, but this is just the first quarter of 2021. Now, this first quarter investment activity has surpassed not only all the quarters in 2020, but even the record high quarter in 2019, which was a tremendous year marked by mega deals. We call them mega deals. They're usually deal size 50 million and above. So what this tells me is that the recovery is here. We're seeing an economic recovery in the venture capital investment space, and that I think this trend will continue given the slowdown of activity in 2020. I think now it's going to be picking back up during Q1, and I think I will continue to see numbers like this and beyond Q1. I can talk a little bit more about deal size, which, as you can see, there's, like I mentioned earlier, deals 50 million plus, mega deals. We have a lot of those, but primarily over almost 60% of the deals are less than 5 million. And most of them range between 1 to 5 million. So that gives you an idea of the type of check sizes that Canadian VCs typically write. So they're between 1 to 5 million, and they would be around the early stage, seed stage, sort of the mid Series A and B type of deal stage. So yeah, 16 mega deals, that was a lot. And like I said, more than about half the deal flow was about 5 million, but more than half the deal size was about under 5 million. There are some top disclosed deals. We're really proud of some of these deals. And this is just for this quarter, for Q1. Clearbank, which is a Canadian, I would say, a success story. They're entering their later stage, and they've added some more capital in their arsenal. A ton of so Top Hat is something that you guys have seen already. It's also at its growth stage. So Canadian venture capital is now focusing more and more on later stage and growth stage. As in the last few years, we've spent a lot of capital on early stage. It just shows that there's a maturity, there's a maturation of Canadian venture capital, as well as Canadian startup companies that are now reaching the growth and later stage and getting ready to go public. And I can talk a little bit about trends going public later on. So Canadian administrative cities, I mentioned that earlier: Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary. They are our top 4 hotspots. Most of the deals happen within these 4 zones. Now, in terms of sector, and this is particularly interesting, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about, is that, folks here might be tech startups, life sciences, you might be in clean tech and energy. We like them all. Canadians like investing in all of them, but ICT, in the information technology space, is definitely very much very, very hot. So off to a very strong start, as you can see, Q1 2021 already surpassing more than half of 2020's overall. So I think on an annualized basis, this is going to continue, and you're going to see more and more investment in the ICT space. Now, we characterize ICT as information technology and communication, but really, it's really kind of all technology that you can think of that link people with each other, right? So during COVID, a lot of these companies were enabling people to stay safe from home. So work from home facilities, even allowing people to order groceries online, things like that. And they've done really, really well during 2020 and 2021 and beyond. A really good story as well is in the life sciences space. And naturally, as you would understand, during the pandemic, there's a highlighted need and urgency in life sciences. So Canadian life science continue to see high levels of investment during 2020 and following on. 2020 was actually a record-setting year for Canadian life sciences, given how many life sciences companies went public. This year, I expect that trend to continue as more venture dollars flow towards companies that focus on e-health, biotechnology, vaccines, personal protective gear, and all of that. So that's really where I'm the most bullish at, is the Canadian life science companies for the 2021 year at the very least. And moving on to clean tech and agribusiness, I'll talk a little bit about clean tech. As you can see, 2020 dropped off a little bit in terms of clean tech investment, but I think that's only because ICT and life sciences sort of siphoned a lot of capital, given that there was a heightened urgency in those sectors. But clean tech, I think, is also an area I'm very bullish on, given that now that hopefully the pandemic urgency is somewhat behind us. Now, companies and venture capitalists are focusing on another global emergency, that is climate change and shifting towards a greener economy. So I'm also very much looking forward to more activity in that space, and agribusiness as well. So that's kind of the sector. Now, in terms of stage, I mentioned it a little bit, but yes, as you can see, a lot of activities were in the early stage phase previously, but now more and more so. They're, especially near 2020, they're more in the later stage. And like I said, that signifies Canadian companies growing more mature and needing more capital as they prepare to go public. The other piece I wanted to talk about was exit. Yeah, so really I would just point to the tremendous growth in 2020, where a ton of companies went public. A lot of them were life sciences. They went public on the NASDAQ. So it shows that Canadian companies are also able to access capital across the border. I mean, they can dual list on the TSX, the Toronto Stock Exchange, and the NASDAQ, or you can go directly to the US and a lot of life sciences companies do, as the market is just very different and much bigger there. So I think that's one of the benefits of being able to grow in Canada, is that you have this testing ground and almost a sandbox for you to test your product, test your stickiness, test your ability to raise capital, and then really hyper grow it in the US once you're able to access funding across the border. So I expect this to continue. Similarly with M&A, Q1 2021 2021 has more M&A activity than we've ever seen, partially because, again, business are recovering and the Canadian dollar is very strong right now compared to the USD. So I'm seeing a lot of cross-border M&A activity as well. Top disclosed exits, like I said, NASDAQ, TSX, there's just some of the examples of companies being able to access capital across the border. So some of these, so a lot of our Canadian capital firms are really active. These are some of the most active investors. Some of the names you would recognize: the BDC, the Innovia, Real Venture. I'm particularly positive on how these venture capital firms are looking to, they're really focused on what they do, but they're all looking to diversify their pipeline. And what that means is they're looking for they're looking to invest in companies that have a diverse talent pool, they have a diverse management team, a diverse board of directors, as well as cap table. So I think, SoGal is definitely right on the money in terms of solving something that venture capital firms traditionally should have been and have been looking at the past little while, is that they're starting to look at underrepresented entrepreneurs and underrepresented sectors to focus their investments on. So I think really the last piece I'll talk about is foreign investment in Canada. And like I said, there's a lot of US investors that are very active in Canada, and these are some of the top ones. And perhaps surprisingly, European investors, particularly German investors, have really found Canada to be a really good spot to park their venture capital dollars. So we have more German investors active than French currently, but I'm hoping that'll change. Looking at you and Sophie, we're really hoping to see more foreign investment activity in Canada. But we also have a lot of representation from Asia as well as Australia. So in the future, I just want to show you this list of Canadian 2B unicorns. We're tracking this list. We call them narwhals, and that's a Canadian unicorn. So what that means is that these companies, I think, are on track to become the next billion-dollar company, and these are all homegrown, home supported. I'm very proud of them. Look them up and follow them. Yes, like I said, these are really the pride and joy of Canada, and I look forward to seeing more companies on this list, and hopefully some companies from the audience as well. And that's it for me. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer some more questions.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. Actually, yeah, some of the names like Hootsuite. I was on a call with a French tech, and a few of them were mentioning, they're like, there's this actually, I had to correct them. They thought it was American Hootsuite. So I'm just giving you an example how Canadians, we're making a presence, globally. And a lot of times it's really important for us to go abroad and do a test. I would say almost get a test market as well, and to also get the numbers so that investors will be able to sort of back their investments. So important. Okay, so I'm just going to open up. Emily, did you want to start opening up the floor to see if people have questions? So we'll slowly mute people, or if they want to raise their hand. Yeah, I guess you can unmute. Emily?
Yep, I'm just looking for questions now in the chat.
Or we can just unmute and people can maybe just ask directly if they're, because I know some people are they're might be from
Maybe
France.
Melissa, while we are waiting for some questions, I would like to echo what's happening also maybe a little bit in France around investment in tech. It's quite similar actually to what's happening in Canada. 2020 was more on the resilience side, how to be resilient, and this year it's more about the recovery, and actually in France startup has been quite extremely resilient in 2020, and they raised a similar amount. Actually, I'm surprised, like it was 5.4 billion raised in 620 deals or operations. We see as well that the investment in tech and startup is more also at the early stages. So seed, Series A's, and it's more at the later stage that it could be more complicated to raise some funds. But we have some great company like who raised over 100 million last year, 9 rounds. So of company like Miracle or Insect on the agribusiness side. I don't know if you know about Insect. They develop some food with insects. So, and they raised 190 million. So in terms of sectors, like Chris mentioned, of course, the all software, B2B software area is quite hot. Life sciences as well. Maybe we can, fintech is also an area that is getting traction right now from investors. So yeah, it was interesting to hear Christy around
Actually,
VC and P.
Yeah, really interesting.
firms.
Just to echo all that answer for your, because I guess being here in Paris, so in France, like I see the gap where there's so much that it's interesting, like just digitalization. I think COVID has sped up the French digital world. They say five years at least, because everybody before was, oh, I don't know about app and everything, but especially myself, not really knowing too much French. I relied heavily on tech to navigate anything around here, right? And if you weren't on there, I wouldn't know about you. And so it is important, even no matter how small. And I think just giving them a platform, I've seen now with like all the Deliveroo, and I mean, it's funny how they were like, oh yes, we have to integrate the Americans too, but they do their own platforms on top of that, and it's great to see them sort of adapt to that, because I know it's probably a little bit the adaptation rate's a little bit slower, but knowing that how it can benefit them has really moved the dial forward in terms of onboarding some of these downloading anyway, some of these apps, because I think before they were like, oh, we don't want this on our phone, but now it's like, okay, fine,
Yeah, there's more and more innovations, and actually even the younger generation, like there was a study, and 45% of young French people, they actually wants to create their own company. So like, there is a big momentum around, startups, innovation, and boosting innovation in France. And obviously the government has been quite supportive around that. But you're right, Melissa, the pandemic accelerated.
Actually, we actually have Denny here, who she's in Paris. Denny, I know I'm putting you on the spot. Did you want to take 2 seconds just to echo what Anne-Sophie said? So since I'm calling you deep tech, she's an actual coder too. So I don't know if she feels. Denny? I know I'm just putting up. Okay, maybe you'll ask her another time. But I was just gonna share some of her, I've been talking to her and just, understanding the tech ecosystem here myself. It takes a while, but I would say like the support is there. Like they very much will, you can find that ecosystem. Not everyone might know about it, but then again, it's finding that right culture. And that's why it's important to, I guess, figure out, if, meeting the right people and meeting the right like-minded people. I know there's a question here for Christy from John. He says, it's great to see that Q1 was a record-setting quarter. What are the trends you are seeing in early stage investing in Canada?
Yeah, great question, John, and appreciate that. Yes, early stage investing in Canada. So I think there's a couple of things in addition to what I mentioned earlier. I'm personally seeing bigger check sizes. I'm seeing a increase in valuation. That could be for a number of different reasons. It could be, because that funds were holding back during the pandemic, and now they're ready to deploy again. It could mean that funds have a lot of dry powder, and because of the availability of money, that valuation is being pushed up just as a result of economic supply and demand. But I like to think that it's because there's also just more capital. There's more capital in in the ecosystem, because the government has actually been a really helpful ally in making sure that venture capital remains resilient. In the latest budget that came out earlier this year, a couple months ago, the Trudeau budget, which was a spending budget in and of itself, there was $450 million earmarked for venture capital investment as a program. So that's the government investing in a handful of funds and expecting the funds to match. And it's an investment, right? It's not a social program, it's investment. So the government previously have done this around 2008 during the last recession, and it has seen just a tremendous multiplier effect in terms of just seeing that dollar being put to work and making sure that there's still that high level activity in the ecosystem. So I think that trend is going to continue, and that earmark of $450 million from the government is again focused on just all sectors, but there's a 50 million earmark for life sciences and another 50 million earmarked for, we call them inclusive growth stream. And that's something we actually lobbied for. Is it's that check is going towards companies with traditionally underrepresented founders or from traditionally underrepresented communities. So BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, women, and women from racialized communities in particular. So that leads me to the other trend that I'm seeing, which is there's going to be a lot more diversity in early stage investing. Maybe in the few years prior, VCs still looked for people that looked like themselves, people that went to the same school as them, and people that they just know, in their networks. But I think all VCs are now taking a concerted effort to diversify their pipeline, investing in people that do not look like or fit their traditional idea of what a unicorn CEO would be, which, typically look like the white male from Harvard or MIT. Now that's going to look a little bit different, which I think is a good thing. I think we've been able to prove time and time again through a lot of research out there that diverse teams just do better and diverse funds perform better. So I'm hoping to see more evidence of that as time continues. Hopefully that answers your question, John. If you have any more, feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for that answer. That's great, actually. And I love how you included that investors are looking beyond the typical, I guess, sort of their comfort zone, which is actually really great to know, because I know I myself, as a woman founder pitching at many competitions, I find myself, I'm the only woman there usually, and against other, maybe engineers or whatnot. And it's hard because I also, my product's a female product. So having male investors try to relate to that is challenging, even though they can see that there's benefit. And I would say, especially with COVID, I know SoGal has, there's a report that it's, unfortunately, the dollars that go into women investors have actually have decreased. So it's nice to hear that the initiative is to actually make a more proactive agenda towards, diversity money into underrepresented communities. So thank you for sharing that.
Maybe I can say something around
Absolutely.
gender equality in France. Actually, there was a law passed about 10 years ago that imposed a quota of 40% of women on boards of French companies. So, France has been trying, to rank high on this topic. There's still much more to do, that's for sure. Listening to a recent interview of BPI France, is the French bank, that support growth of French companies or France-based companies in France. They usually co-invest at the early stage. They're the main, I would say, investor at a very early stage, and they co-invest at later stage as well. But the head was saying that actually there's unfortunately only 6% of women-led companies, got this VC funding. So it shows that, there's a lot of room here to do better around, diversity and supporting diverse businesses. But like Chrissy mentioned, like I think there is a huge opportunity now, and I'm hopeful like we will see more and more VC funds or angels even to support, businesses underrepresented, led by underrepresented leaders or entrepreneurs.
I do like to sometimes think that innovation has sort of no, I would say no sex, but sometimes it does, because of what Christine just mentioned. It's all about relating and looking like you, and it's getting investors that also look different is really important too. I think it's not just about them putting into money, it's on the flip side too, so that they can relate and they can deliver tools to help support these communities. I think is really, really important. So, Emily, did you want to unmute to see if there's because we only have a few minutes left, if anybody wants to chime in and just maybe say a few words or have any questions?
Yeah, if anyone wants to unmute, feel free.
Yeah,
and ask
you
a
guys can go ahead
question.
and unmute. I didn't know if it was Emily's actually.
Oh, we
hosting from
do
Toronto.
have a question in the chat as well.
Okay. So this is from, is it Rosa? Are you investing in innovative biotech energy tech startups from former Soviet unions with relocation possibilities? Thanks. Rose, did you want to unmute? I was just going to ask you to, if you're comfortable, just maybe to, do you mean in Canada or? Sorry, I guess she's probably still on mute. Okay, I guess.
Yeah, so sorry, I was on mute. Basically, some of those companies are based in former Soviet Union countries, and some of them also have headquarters based in US, but they are considering getting investment from Canada or from France, for example, and they don't mind discussing like relocation opportunities as well. Like, what are some of the programs they can apply, or I don't know, what is the stage usually this kind of startups can hope for that kind of investment? Thank you.
So maybe to quickly, Rosa, so I don't know, you mentioned maybe in former European, the Russian countries. It depends. I understand from your question, you have you're targeting investment, and you have also the project maybe to relocate the business. So I think there's two sides, two questions, and definitely, I mean, Business One, we can be a first point of contact for you to see and assess, how we can help. But definitely, you mentioned biotech sector, maybe on the energy side, if I understand well. Definitely, those sectors are high priority. It's create values and create jobs, and we do support those projects, but again, it will be important to better understand. But yes, we'll be happy maybe to have even a first conversation and see how we can help around tracking some investment and also relocating France. I think it's always better if you have a foothold in the country where you want to get VC or investment. I think it's the same for Canada. VC firms usually they like when there is at least a good foothold in Canada or some operations in Canada.
Just to add to that, I mean, for biotech especially, I feel like having multiple players is I mean, even multiple players as in countries is actually, quite feasible too, because not only will you gain different testing grounds, but also you'll be able to leverage off of each other's different policies and laws and stuff like that, especially with when it comes to health tech. So, I mean, learning from one, we all know that it can definitely benefit too. So I do see more of a, regardless if it's, former Soviet Union or whatnot, I think that it really, it's really thinking global instead versus you're from this country and this country, I think sometimes. So I don't know if it was, and so if you're like, perhaps you guys could, there's more continual conversation to share on the
Can
chat.
you please, thank you so much. Can you please share some contact so I can contact you and discuss more details?
Sure.
Thanks.
There's a question from the audience from a Barbara E. Jones.
Yeah, I was just gonna,
on women-led
Christy,
startups. No problem. I'll definitely answer to it. The question again is, am I able to break out these wonderful numbers to reflect investment in women-led startups? Great question. It's something, the short answer is I'm not able to do that right now, but here's the but, is that I'm actually working on a comprehensive employee engagement survey across all of VC and PE. So I'm rolling out essentially a diversity survey on all the investors across Canada who is currently working in a VC and PE fund. Now, the next step for that, which I think will be another year or so, is to ask those VCs to roll out that survey across their portfolio companies so that I can capture this piece of statistic that Barbara has asked for. So yeah, it's incredibly important for us to know where the dollar is flowing towards, not just for women-led startups. We're not looking at just gender, but also sexual orientation, ethnicity and race, and also disability status. It's incredibly important to understand, and Sophie said, it's incredibly important to understand the intersectionality of seeing, like I said, if dollars are flowing towards underrepresented groups. And again, what's happened in the world, I have to say, has certainly been impactful in helping venture capital investors realize that, we live in a different environment now where socially conscious entrepreneurs are going to want to know that their investors are diverse, that their investors are investing in diverse companies. So that's important to me at my work, and that's important to the industry as well. And I'm starting to see that being picked up as no longer just a good to have, but a must have. And like I said, the movements currently, whether it be Black Lives Matter or Stop Asian Hate, that people are listening. And I think, it's as a result of these social movements, changes are being made in the private capital world. So I think that's really positive, and I'm really encouraged to see progress in that space.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm just being mindful of the time. Oh, thank you so much, Christy, for sharing your message. Yeah, I'm just being mindful of everyone's time. Thank you so much, Anne Sophie. Thank you, Christy, for sharing all that wonderful information with us. As I said, it's it's something that's both the topics are something so important to me, and I thought that it'd be great because I've had a lot of questions, people ask me. So I thought, what better way but to have the experts actually talk about, the tools available to both investors and anyone who's, not especially feeling they belong in the underrepresented communities. So once again, everyone, if you can, I was going to say, if you have any additional questions, you can email us here at Toronto at IamSoGal. Emily, if you can maybe put that in the chat there, and we can actually share some of the information, but we'll also follow up with a link in the recording for this if anybody wasn't able to make it. And for any future events, if anybody also, wants to, sign up for more information, also please email us. And you can follow us also on a Facebook group page. We can add you to there as well as Twitter. So again, it's SoGal Foundation. Yes, without, I guess, I was going to wish everyone in France a good evening. And I guess lunchtime it's right now, right? Lunchtime in Toronto.
Yes.
Right? Is there any other last minute things, or everyone's saying okay? Yes, you got it. I'm just looking at everyone's messages, so it looks like everyone looks like they're really excited to hear, especially about all the work that's being done for diversity. So that's really great. Oh, Nadia, did you want to say something? She's just waiting.
No, I just wanted to say that was a really amazing discussion, and I think it's really important that we highlight the idea of intersectionality and identity not identity politics, but the challenges around different identities when it comes to this space, especially in the tech field. I find myself the only woman at the table in many, many places. I'm the only person of color too. So I think that it's really important to highlight that that is a challenge and it's real, but even more so important to know that it's recognized in the industry and people are doing the work to tackle those challenges so that we can all be more successful. So thank you for a wonderful talk.
And I'm going to put Nadia is one that's interested. I'm trying to get her here to France, and she is fluent in French, unlike me.
And I'm double vaccinated and ready to come anytime you will let me come.
Yeah, and I think Fatima's already gone because I know but that's okay. As again, any other questions, I would just be mindful we're 6 minutes over. So anyways, but thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. I am going to share everyone's contacts and yes, good evening to some, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much again.